LeBron wants to get serious, and Chris Paul wants a title and wants to finally get a run at the finals. These guys may need to work together if Houston is the place for him. Another destination close to our heart, Eric, is the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll get into their issues in the front office in segment 2, but from a fit standpoint, how do you feel like LeBron would fit in Philly?
This is probably one of the better fits, and it's not just because I'm a Sixers homer, and really once LeBron retires, I can finally, put all my rooting interest into the Philadelphia 76ers again. But it would be amazing if LeBron came there because I'd have the best of all worlds. I really think he fits well on that team because I think that he could play sort of that one guard or two guard role still that he's kind of been used to with Cleveland. You've got guys underneath like Embiid. You've got another guy in Simmons who, although he really needs to work on his shooting, I think that will develop. LeBron wasn't a very good shooter the first 3 or 4 years of his career, and compared to where he is now, it's light years different. So I'm not going to just write Ben Simmons off just because he can't shoot right now. I think he is a very, very talented player. So combine him and Embiid with a guy like LeBron, maybe that fires LeBron up from a leadership standpoint. He certainly is going to have to be a better leader than just being disappointed in all the players when they don't do what he wants them to do. But if that were to work out, I think that could provide just enough momentum to get them over the hump. Now, some of the friends that I have that are huge Philly fans along with me, they are absolutely against LeBron coming there because of exactly what you've said. We don't really want him to come there and be the GM type of role and start messing around with that team because he's 33, 34 years old. He's going to mess up that roster and then retire. That's, if you're a Sixers fan looking at the long-term future, that would be the downside to LeBron coming there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the difference would be now that knowing LeBron's age and depending on who the Sixers actually bring in to fill that role will be that they're going to be smart enough to look and say, okay, what's LeBron's window of really being a superstar? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What is it? We can't make moves that strap us for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. So maybe it's a lot of, we're not going to sign a Tristan Thompson or a JR to a 4 or 5 year deal. Maybe it's a 1 year deal. That seems like it's going to be more of how they'll play it now. They're going to learn from the Cleveland mistakes. But from a cap standpoint, Philly's one of the cleaner teams out there. Philly's got about $30 million in cap space. Now, they do need to sign J.J. Redick. I don't see them bringing Amir Johnson back. But they're a team that could easily have the room to sign LeBron to his big deal and then not have to destroy the roster and still have pretty much all their pieces in place. And Eric, with a couple moves, like trading a Robert Covington and a Bayless, they can quickly create another $18, $20 million in cap space. And then you can start to talk about other free agents they could potentially go after. Could they get a Paul George to join him as well in Philly?
But see, that's, to your point, that's an exact scenario where if LeBron takes 15 to 20 million instead of 35 million, what a huge difference that would make, because then Philly wouldn't be so strapped and you could bring in a Kawhi or a Paul George that team could be the super team of the East.
That's a whole different scenario. That holds a whole monkey wrench in. If LeBron takes, half the money or takes 20 million versus 30 or whatever his max number is, yeah, that creates a lot more options for Philly because, again, Robert Covington's a pretty nice piece out there at $10 million a year when you look at some of the money that these guys are making and what he could contribute. Bayless is a nice player off the bench, but you get that $18, $19 million off the books plus the 30 they have. They've got some money to do some damage there. And in the East, I would have to think, Eric, that LeBron's got to look at the East and say, that's got to be the easier pathway. I mean, even with Boston sitting there, I still would rather try to get through Boston to get to the finals than have to go through Golden State to get there. So I would think that LeBron's got to think that same way. We'll go through these other teams a little quicker. So we've got the Lakers that are out there. That team has been out there. LeBron obviously has ties to that LA market. He has houses there. We've heard his wife likes that area. Now he's got the boys coming up, his two sons. Where will they want to play in terms of high school as they come up through their careers? LeBron even came out in the finals and said he'd like to play long enough to potentially have a chance to play with Bronny Jr. if he could get to the league, that they could either be on the same team or play against each other. That's one of his long-term goals. So are the Lakers a good fit for LeBron?
Lakers are probably the second best fit behind Philly, and it just depends on your perspective. Philly is sort of a win right now if LeBron comes. The Lakers are a possibly win right now, but the Lakers are a bad team right now. So if LeBron goes to the Lakers, it is maybe, and you might disagree with me on this, but it's maybe one more opportunity to change the legacy conversation, because it would be, I know it's the Lakers and they have a storied history, but even with Lonzo, who they're really ready to part with, and the other players that they have, it's not like they were good. They're not a good team. And some of their draft picks haven't worked out. So it really would be LeBron and then whoever he could bring in and recruit to the Lakers. It would be an opportunity for LeBron to rebuild the Los Angeles Lakers, possibly win a title or two before his retirement, and bring them back to national notoriety. That's a little bit different than a Sixers team who really was very close, and outside of Boston shooting the lights out of the gym, and then, some of the dumb coaching moves and some of the sort of mistakes that Simmons and Embiid made in tight moments near the end of the games, the Sixers were close. The Sixers were very close to those the Eastern Conference Finals. The Lakers, they weren't close. And so if LeBron goes there, I think that's a possible legacy move because he can rebuild Los Angeles.
From a cap standpoint, I mean, the Lakers have the most money that is out there, but looking at their roster, it feels like LeBron would have to try to recruit somebody to come with him. Somehow they're going to find a shooting guard or get something out there, because even Paul George doesn't make a lot of sense because they've already got Kuzma and Brandon Ingram on the roster, and LeBron and Paul George. How many forwards can you play at one point with Lonzo? The Lakers would be that team that I talked about in the first question to you that's not really close, that if LeBron could get them over the hump, yeah, that would have more meaning to it than jumping on a team that's really close that we think is on the cusp and winning a title there. So I'm sure that factors in that market, LeBron's basically marketability, his brand that he wants to build up. LA would be the spot for it. From a basketball standpoint, though, you start to wonder, is this the best move? How close are they? How many years is it going to take to put this together? Lonzo's a little bit like Ben Simmons in the fact that not a great shooter, but he is more of a true point guard in terms of size-wise. But in a league that's filled with shooting and needs shooters, if you put too many guys that can't shoot, it doesn't open the floor for LeBron to do what he does best.
Yeah, Lakers are already setting the stage, though. They aren't married to Lonzo. They aren't married to Kuzma. There is no one on that roster that's untouchable. And so even though they have some of those pieces
no one's untouchable when it comes to getting LeBron.
That's exactly it. They have pretty much said if LeBron and Paul George and whoever they want, they will move heaven and earth to make that happen. And I don't think anyone on that roster is safe from being traded or used in multiple deals in order to get the pieces around LeBron and Paul George and possibly Kawhi Leonard or whoever to make it happen in LA. I also think LeBron was setting the stage a little bit. I actually think that Cleveland may not be out of the picture yet because he was setting the stage that this is not just about basketball. Again, I think he knows the GOAT conversation's over. And so he's sort of letting us know that this is going to be about Bronny Jr., his wife, and his family. And so from that aspect, Cleveland or LA make the most sense because it's where he's settled.
Well, the Cavs should just draft Bronny Jr. now. Maybe that'll keep him there. I mean, that might be the monkey wrench that nobody knows about.
Well, he could probably start for them over George Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And cost a heck of a lot less. All right, a team that gets brought up that I don't think has got a big shot at getting LeBron is the Miami Heat. They keep getting brought up by media talking about this. Any chance there?
No.
I don't see it either. From
no.
a cap standpoint, money standpoint, they're already in the hole. I don't see how they have the pieces that would attract LeBron back there. It's basically would be like a Cleveland 2.0.
Yeah, it's just, and you make a lot of good analogies throughout the history of our show. This, to me, is an analogy of like an old franchise movie series trying to come out with like, their third sequel, their fourth sequel. And it's like for 5 minutes, you think that it might be good. And then you go see it. And then you walk out of the theater because you're like, this is really terrible. You're not going to relive those moments in Miami. Dwayne Wade is not the Dwayne Wade he was. LeBron's not even going to be the LeBron he was. Then you don't have the other pieces. It's not Miami 2.0. Terrible fit. Don't do it.
We have two more teams before we close out segment one here. You brought this team up because you like it for one aspect, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. I won't steal your thunder, let you talk about why you feel this could be the best fit for LeBron.
If LeBron wants to close out his career with titles, and he does not care about the name on his jersey or how obscure the city or market is that he's going, he should go to the San Antonio Spurs, because I think that they could actually get through the Warriors. They could get through the Rockets. And one of the reasons I feel that way, Justin, is because Greg Popovich is probably the best coach that LeBron would have ever had in his career. And Popovich has proven that over long periods of time, he can handle stars playing together, i.e. Tim Duncan and Tony Parker, and obviously David Robinson early on, Manu Ginobili, then Kawhi Leonard. Popovich is not my favorite guy in the world, and part of that is because the Spurs just kind of needled me there for a while the way that the Warriors did because of the way that they beat the Cavs and then the Heat. But take nothing away from Popovich. If LeBron wants to close out his career with a reasonable situation where the GM, the ownership, and the coaching staff will control the narrative in that locker room, San Antonio is the place that they could win titles.
San Antonio makes a lot of sense from an on the court. Off the court, they would need some moves to be made in terms to make this work. But they have, if they can figure out what to do with Pau Gasol's contract and move a few others, it's not that far-fetched to believe it. But yeah, from a basketball standpoint, look, Greg Popovich came out and was just lushed over LeBron James earlier this year. I think that was more of off-the-court stuff from a political standpoint, but just talked him up about how great it was. And look, we know Popovich likes guys that buy into the system and guys that can play the game selfless. I mean, there's not a better passer in the game today than LeBron that can come in and play in that system. For the Spurs, they got to figure out what they're doing with Kawhi Leonard. They going to be able to fix that? Is that a bridge that's been burned? Does LeBron coming there impact them? Kawhi wants that Supermax deal. That's been all the talk, that he didn't want to play with an injury, sort of like Isaiah Thomas did, and cost himself a ton of money that he's going to be due over $200 million next year. So from an on-the-court standpoint, Eric, it's a great fit. There's one other team that's kind of flying under the radar that I'll get your take on, and that is, could LeBron James somehow find his way onto the Boston Celtics roster?
Oh, gosh.
And the reason I'll bring that up is I'll give you a second to sort of think about this, because there's been a lot more rumor coming out about the Celtics' concern that Kyrie might walk after next year. And Danny Ainge is not a guy that likes to mess around. So would he make a move, send Kyrie somewhere, some kind of 3-team trade where, I threw it out there to my brother, just, would somehow the Knicks get involved where they get Kyrie, Cleveland gets a bunch of picks because Boston has them, and then LeBron signs and trades and goes to Boston where they already have a point guard in Rozier, and you've got a lot of other talent around him. Now, there's a Horford deal that's out there, but they've got a lot of young players and assets where they could make some moves. It just feels like it's a deal that's kind of under the radar, but if you're going to go contend, why not go to the best team in the East where you're going to get to the finals?
Wow. I got to be honest, I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't really put that much thought about it because I just never imagined LeBron and Kyrie playing together again. And so, as you said, it would have to include Kyrie not being there. So that's why it really never crossed my mind. But Danny Ainge has proven that he's going to do some pretty radical things, and he's not afraid to take some chances.
He's not shy.
Gordon Hayward is definitely on the way back from his injury. All signs point to him being at full strength come this, next season, come October. And then you've got some of those other pieces there that proved in this last playoff run that there's a lot of heart in a lot of those other players. Wow. You threw me that curveball. I don't love it. I mean, and that's not really anything against the Celtics although if you're a LeBron guy like I am, it's probably the easiest path back to the finals because as you said, if you go to a Western Conference team, i.e. the Rockets, the Lakers, or even like we just talked about the Spurs, ultimately you're battling the Warriors just to get to the finals. Through LeBron's last 4 years, he's been battling the Warriors in the finals. Under those other scenarios, he's got to battle the Warriors just to get to the finals. That's why the Sixers, and now to your point, the Celtics are probably the most attractive because you can dominate the East and just continue to get to the finals. Wow. And could he go to 9 finals straight, 10 finals straight, 11 finals straight? It's maybe some good points there, but I hadn't put a lot of thought into that, so I don't have much else to say.
Well, I look back to when he initially went to Miami. That team felt like it came out of nowhere. It was sort of under the radar where it was like 2 days before that, all of a sudden these rumors started creeping up. And it's just kind of a weird narrative coming out of Boston of like all of a sudden there was this concern around, will Kyrie re-sign with us after next year? And with what they gave up to get him, it just feels like, well, Terry Rozier played pretty darn good for us in these playoffs. How much better could Kyrie get? I think Danny Ainge would much rather have LeBron for 3 or 4 years versus Kyrie for 3 or 4 signing there. So I just think that the pieces are there. They have all those draft picks. You start to look at who's available and who's